Okay, so the scenario of slow internet performance, meaning that you've spoken to the client. So let's assume this is the situation. Our normal setup, we know there will be firewall, let's say connecting to the core switch, connecting to PC. And this is a scenario of everybody. Internet is going to relate to everybody. If it's a single user, then you are going to go through the same process of checking the switch connection in terms of speed and cable related if it's a single PC. But if it's mostly relating to more users, is what you are going to have. And that also, you also have to ask to be sure, is it only application that use internet or everything going to the internet? So these are detailed information you need to guide you in order to troubleshoot. But common example with issues like this in the industry where you get to know is you're always going to have a backup internet pipe and you have a primary internet pipe. Now, the primary is always going to have big size than the backup. So let's say the primary is 1 gig and the backup is 500. Now, if this circuit fails, all users will switch back to the backup. And when they switch back to the backup, they will notice performance issue going to the internet. And that is something that you normally will get. So you have to do trace route to either 8.8.8, which is Google IP, or 4.2.2 to determine whether the traffic is going through the primary or the secondary. How will you know that? You will see that your next hop IP is giving you the IP of the backup before going to the internet. So you see the next hop, you see the IP of your firewall, you see the IP, if it's a router, you see the IP of the router before you see the 8.8.8. So your last hop, where it goes, is what determines that. So sometimes it could be that the primary has failed and you are now using the backup. So then you have to get the service provider aware to resolve that issue for you. So that is a common thing you can do. Another scenario for slow internet, which we've discussed but we'll go through again, has to do with pinging to determine if there is a packet drop. So you can be on the inside network, you do a ping test as I show you. So you ping with 8.8.8 and then you do a reply of whatever, maybe reply of 100 or whatever the case may be. So when you reply and you see dots, then that is an issue. So example, like let me do this so that you get to know what I'm talking about. So we did that relating to slow network. The same thing is what I'm saying here. So let me see some of the IP we can use for this. So what I spoke about was you do a ping test, and this is not going to be 8.8. So I'm using one example of an IP which is working on this network because we are not connecting to the internet now. So let's say .3 and you say reply of 100 to see whether there is a drop. And I said that if there is a drop, you are going to see something like this. Then it comes this way. And this issue means that you have to deal with the providers. So one of the issues in such scenario that you get in the industry has to do with your internet falling to the backup, or the provider network have a latency issue, and then you reach out to them for them to look into that. Another thing is the service provider port errors. So you also have to check, and not only the service provider. I've seen other scenario where I'm going to share with you as well. Sometimes you can get port errors on the connection to the firewall because that is the one using to go outside. So that is something you have to check. Check the interface that connects to the firewall and see whether there is any CRC errors. And also check on the firewall to the router. If you don't have access to the firewall, you can check from the router to the firewall to see whether there are any errors issue communicating to the firewall. Then you check the ports going to the modem or to the MPLS you check that interface as well, and that will also support you in terms of that. So that is very, very key. And sometimes it could be a departmental issue, maybe connection on this switch. In that case, check the connection from the access switch to the core in terms of the cable error or CRC error on the interface. And this is what sometimes you get the issue from. And if all this doesn't resolve in that scenario, which mostly what I'm talking about will answer that, but if it doesn't resolve, check the logs on the core switch or the router to see whether you see some error code. There are so many scenarios. Just browse that error code and it will guide you on how to fix that issue. But in practice, most often, this is what resolves internet slow performance. So that is something you have to take note of when it comes to that as well. And I'll also pick another scenario of no internet. So it's either they are going to say no internet, or the internet is there, which means that the service is there but the performance is slow. Now, no internet is also something that comes with different scenario. So know the scope of the issue to check. I've told you if it relates to single device, it means that it might be on this is no internet. So no internet on a single device if I'm to pick this scenario to troubleshoot. So let me use this scenario to troubleshoot that single device. So it could be that this device, single, is on a wrong VLAN, so they will not have internet access. Or it's on a, it's just like communication issue, like the pingable issue. But this one we are focusing on internet. So it's either on a wrong VLAN, error disable, or maybe the VLAN is there but on the trunk link is not allowed. That could also be an issue with the single device when it comes to that. Or cable related issue, which we've spoken about that, on how to verify what to do to check that. So those are the possibility when they don't have internet on single device. But what if it's more device? Let's say you have all of this not having internet access. That means that you have to look out for the switch. So this works similar to dealing with a communication issue. Maybe the switch is down, the UPS is down, or the cable connection to the core is down, or the uplink port as I'm talking about is the transceiver is damaged, so it's also defective and it's not communicating. All those things are possible scenarios you have to look out for. Okay, and then if all this doesn't resolve your internal, so what I'm talking about is internal scenario. The device having power, make sure the device have power. And if it doesn't resolve, you check the cable connection to the core to the firewall, all the way to the internet as we spoke about. And if all those doesn't resolve, then the issue is not internal. So now you have to call the provider and tell them that you seems to have internet issue. But what if it's a remote office? What I'm talking about is a data center. If it's a remote office and you are working from the data center, ping the remote router. If it's not reachable, let somebody go to the IDF and find out whether there is power to the network devices. If there is power to the network devices and you still don't have internet, you can call the provider to check on their side. And if provider said that they are okay and there is no outage on that location, then you need a drive to that location. You drive to that location, and with scenario like that, maybe this port has been administratively down. The one connecting to the internet pipe is administratively down, and for that reason, everybody on the remote office is down. Or maybe this is not administratively down, but you have issue with the cable from the router to the switch, or the transceiver, you have issue with it. And how do you know that? You see that it's not connecting. You see that it's not connecting, or it's not even well seated. I've had scenario of all those things. It's not well seated, and that could be an issue of that as well. So in an interview, when they ask you, can you walk me through step by step of resolving one scenario where they had no internet. Or, okay, let me put it this way. There's two questions on this. What are the possible causes of location not having internet? It differ. I mean, based on my experience, it can be different issues. Sometimes device losing power could be the reason why they don't have internet. So that is one example. Sometimes it could be a provider issue. So that is also another example. Sometimes it could be a bad UPS. It's also another example. So all this scenario is a checklist that you can use for interview, and that is what I'm reading about. Or sometimes it could be a software issue. The software is hanging and you have to reboot the router, meaning that you've checked all the things I've spoken about, but you cannot resolve it. And a software hanging for routers, you see that you cannot ping the router, and that gives you indication that you have to what? You have to reboot the router or even reboot the switch, whatever the case may be. And if it's MPLS circuit, it could be that the BGP is down, so you are not forming neighbor. How do you know that? You do show IP BGP summary, and that is where you see whether your BGP is down or not, based on the BGP configuration we've done. And if it's relating to VPN, let's say you connect to VPN, what it means is that the provider said they have internet, you check your router, you check your switch, you check everything internally, you are good. But you still cannot go to the internet. You check whether there was any firewall changes over the night. And sometimes they make changes on the firewall by changing the security parameters, and that will connect. And I'm talking of remote office. Everything I'm talking about is you are at the data center, you cannot connect to the remote office. So all those things are things you have to look out for in order to make sure that issue is resolved. And the link being disabled on the provider side or any of the other links. So what are the important links? The switch to the router and the router to the modem. So these are the link you have to check whether they are not disabled or they are in good condition. And these are common issues you can get in terms of that. Now, if all this is not the issue, but still they don't have internet access, it could be a DNS issue. And if it's DNS, it will be the whole company, because mostly we use one common DNS. So you see that everybody don't have internet access, or one data center to certain remote site, they don't have internet access. It's because the DNS server is down. Or sometimes the DNS server will not be down, but the services have stopped working. So what you do, which this one, the desktop people know it. So sometimes it doesn't come to you, and they will fix it by reaching out to the server team. But let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to the command prompt. How you know that the DNS service is not working is by doing NS lookup. And it should give you your domain name, your company domain name, and it should give you your DNS IP. So also things you have to find out when in your first day at work is to make sure that you know the DNS server IP. You need to know this as a network engineer. You need to know the DHCP, as I've spoken about that. Another thing is to know the DNS as well, what IP, so that in situation like this you can ping the server. And if it's pinging, you can also test whether it's also having the right domain and the right IP. Let me give you one scenario where I resolved. So somebody at a remote office, I don't know what happened, connected this router, this switch, with a home router. Okay? I don't know whether he wanted to do what in the company. So when he connected it, everybody connecting on the same VLAN that this router was connected to were getting IP address from the router and not from the DHCP server. And for that reason, all those people were not having internet access. So how we got to know is, if you pick this PC and do NS lookup, you get to know that this DNS server is not our server, because you know the IP already. Then you have to trace this IP to know the location of the router and disconnect it. That was the scenario. Are you all getting the flow of what I'm saying? So that is something you have to talk about when it comes to what? No internet. So everything I'm talking about, no internet. If all this is not working, that is where you can call me and I can give you guidance. But trust me, you will not even call me, because I know I've given you all the information that you need. So let me add the last part of it. Department not having internet access, then I will let you ask your questions. Okay, so we spoke about slow internet, we spoke about no internet for remote office or the whole data center, and then this is just a department. This one is relating to a switch. That is always the case. See whether the switch has power. See the uplink cable we spoke about. If all those things are okay, see that whether the software is hanging. By doing pinging, then you can reboot it. Check if the IP address, if the device has the right IP address. Are they getting a PIPA? And if it's just a department, it could be that the DHCP has run out of IP address. So that one, only section of the network will not get IP. So that is something you have to check to see the scope has not been run out. These are possible scenario you can get when a department say they don't have internet access. So you can see that what I'm talking about is no more GNS. That is why I'm saying that after today's class, ask yourself, what are the common issues I'm going to resolve? The common issues you are going to resolve is going to relate with device not communicating, or slow performance, or no internet or slow internet. These are the things you are going to solve. So you ask yourself, how will I solve it? If I'm asked in an interview face to face, how am I going to answer that? Have you ever resolved any issue relating to no internet performance? Oh yes, I've had a couple of remote site which has been down, and if my memory serves me right, it varies. Sometimes it could be a device not having power because our UPS is not working. Sometimes it could be the software is hanging, you have to reboot the router. Sometimes it could be an issue related to the provider network. Maybe they have an outage at the location. So no internet issue. These are the common things that I can remember. This proves that you have worked before. You understand? So these are things that you have to be able to answer them in an interview. So any question when it comes to internet, users in real life, not GNS, not having internet. Yes, Chestero.
Yeah, so bro, this comes to like question with the ISP connections.
Yes,
So
yes, and it's not always ISP. So you see that I've said so many things. So I don't want to. You mean that your question is relating to ISP? That is what you mean. Okay,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
so when let's roll back a little bit. Like
Okay.
when we're doing like firewall, we talk about like the type of ISP connections, right? And we talk about a single homemade, like dual homemade, like
Yes.
single multi and
Yes.
dual multi. So let's say if you are dealing with like something like a single homemade, which is like just one ISP, right?
Yes.
So in case of something like that, and if the ISP is down, then technically, which means you are down, right?
Yes,
Can't
of
really
course. You are down. But there are companies who are using remote office is always going to be single homing or remote office, because you will not have two internet pipe for remote office. So if ISP is down, you are down. But data center, and even data center, there are companies with one remote office. It's not everybody who is doing proper network in America. And when you start working, you will know. Your network is as good as the engineers you have. That is how network is. So the person who design your network determine how good your network will be. So you can have a company, very well established company, very resource company, and then you ask yourself, why do you have one internet pipe? but you are not working as a solution engineer. So don't go and say that. You can make a suggestion in an interview that why don't you get two internet pipe for redundancy purpose. In terms of your size survey, you can make that suggestion. But if they don't do it, you can't worry your head over that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the last time we talked about this firewall and the ISP connections, and we're having like a little bit issues with like the names and stuff like that, right? So the first name, let's say if you're dealing with like single homemade, the first single, does it mean like, is it for the single, does it mean the ISP when you use the single homemade?
Okay, so let me bring that so that everybody who is listening will also get the idea. So okay, I'm not sure if it was in the network, but this is the firewall guide. Okay, so we have various ISP connection types. So we have single homie and dual homie. So single homie means that everything is single. Cable connection is single, ISP is single. Dual homie means that you are connected to single by using dual links. So you want to have, in case one link goes down, which you can have cable failure, then you still have redundancy. That is what we mean by dual homie. And then we have single multi-homie, which is the common one, where you are connected, the cable is single, like this one. The cable is single, but you have the connection to be what? Double on the ISP side. That is what we mean by talking about single multi-homie. So this is the image of what? Single multi-homie. Does that make sense? But we also hold on. We also have dual multi, which means that you have double link to all the ISP, but that is not common. Yes, now you can continue.
So if you are talking about the link, since we're dealing with firewall, does the link mean the firewalls?
No. The links means the cables. The cable. So you have okay, so let's say this is your switch connecting to your firewall, and this is the antenna. Then the firewall, you can connect firewall to a provider network, or you can connect firewall to how do you call it? If you are so this is single homie. Let me see if I use dual. So if I want to deal with dual homie, my design is going to be like this is my firewall. Then over here on the firewall to the switch, I can have double link and bundle it to the switch. Then from the switch, it can go to a router before it goes to the provider network. Do you get the idea of what I'm saying? Or you can have a connection where it's like that, from the firewall straight to what? The internet pipe. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So over here, the router has only one link.
You can also introduce this. You can bundle this link and bundle this link. What you can bundle is the provider side, because then you need two connections on the provider. But this is internal network. So you remember that I show you how to bundle a link. So you can bundle router to a switch and a switch to the firewall. But anytime you want to deal with two links, you always place a switch for redundancy purpose. Does that make sense?
Okay, I still have like a little bit down about the links. So does the links means it's connected to? So since we're dealing with firewalls, right?
Yeah.
And we talk about links, does it mean the links goes to the core switches, or we're talking about it goes through the firewalls? So we wanted to be like.
Okay, so like if let's say for this single homie design, this will be one firewall. It's just one firewall. Then one firewall it connect to modem, or let's say MPLS. So it has direct connection. Then from here it connect to your core switch. So if it's two core switch, you have one also here. So you connect one also here. So you don't have redundancy on the firewall. You have redundancy on only the links. So it still doesn't solve the issue. Do you get it? That is why if you are doing firewall, I do more of design concepts. So this having two firewall, two links is ideal. You understand? But in your case, I was not teaching you firewall. That is why I didn't go through that. But there are so many designs you can deploy, where it means that you can have two firewall, two links. And that is the common setup that you have in the industry. And not only that, you can also have a situation of how your firewall redundancy should solve the issue. Are you using it to solve fault tolerance, load balancing, or you are deploying firewall to solve what you call enhanced parameter protection, or you are using it to solve protected subnet redundancy? So under firewall, you are going to understand very well your wide area network, your WAN, in terms of how firewall is deployed. And that is the reason why I said that based on what you've known so far, in your interview, they are not hiring you for firewall jobs. Firewall jobs can give you minimum of 50 to 250,000. And you want to pay me something less, and you want me to do firewall and network. So you tell them that in terms of that, you have a firewall people, so you are not the go-to person when it comes to firewall, so that you will not be bombarded with some of this question. But you can create VPN because you do it on Cisco routers. So you can do VPN using the ASDM on the firewall and all that. That can be easy for you to answer, and then it will also support them in terms of the basic knowledge they want network engineers to have. So every job role and the level of knowledge to have. So that is the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So okay. So I'm gonna summarize so far what we have. So if you talk about a single homehead, we mean like, let's say like one ISP and one link.
Yes. One ISP, one link to your internal network, not to the provider. Provider is always going to be one.
Yeah, which is the ISP. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you talk about the dual, then it means one ISP, two links.
Yes. One ISP, two links. Yes.
And the single multi is like two ISP, one link.
Two ISP. So yes, the single is two ISP, one link, and the dual multi is two ISP, two links.
Okay, so the link doesn't mean like you're supposed to go through like the firewall. It can be like something else.
Oh yeah, the link. So there are so many designs. That is why I'm giving you one example. So you can have the firewall connecting to modem, or you can have the firewall connecting to a router before a modem. Why will you go for this design? Because you want to use the router for more routing purpose, and then use the firewall just for filter purpose, for your ACL and NAT rules and all those stuff. By any routing process, you want the router to take care of, just for performance purpose. Does that make sense? But you see, we have to be strategic with the level of knowledge you have. You are not going to get job because you don't know something. You are not going to get job because you were not honest with your answer in terms of what you said you know. That is one of the reasons why you will not get job. So that is the reason why I didn't talk much relating to this aspect, because all you have to do is, I have two internet pipe that connect to our ASA firewall, then you connect to the core switch. The internet pipe can be modem, it can be routers connecting to internet. Do you get that? And that is for your data center. And all your remote office, you are using routers. Don't even go with firewall. You are using routers connecting VPN. So that is your background and that is your working environment. And you are going to be hired because they want to make sure that what you are saying in terms of your day-to-day activities, they are real. That is what the interview is all about. The interview is about your resume and the job description. And your resume, you have to tell them what you know in terms of your day-to-day activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Okay, good. So